Bonjour tout le monde. Alors moi, on m'avait pas dit de faire en anglais, donc. Don't worry, it's in English. So hi everyone. Today I will talk a bit about my story as a game developer entrepreneur to share some of my experience. This PowerPoint, I am not the designer in the company, so the PowerPoint is not the nicest. Howdy, so who I am? Who am I? I am Alexis, Giard as introduced. I am the co-founder of Asteroid Lab, which is a small company based here in Effinger, and which is developing the game Terraformers. And I will start with a small trailer of the game to show you what we're doing. It's a 1-minute trailer. That was Terraformers, which is our game, which, as you might have seen, is a game about colonizing Mars and eventually terraforming the planet. But I will. So, how did we get here? How did I get here personally? So, some backgrounds. A little bit of background about myself. I have a profound passion for game. It's not just about gaming. I was always very interested on how game works and what makes a game fun. And I also had a love for starting a project and never actually finishing them. Not related to games necessarily, but I was always doing small projects here and there. And so, of course, I never considered that was actually something I could do, making a game. I never actually tried to make a game before. But I did want to work into games somehow, into the industry of video game. So I studied business administration, and after getting my master thesis, I did an internship at Nintendo. I couldn't find a picture with Nintendo, but that was me at Nintendo, hoping to get into game. During my internship at Nintendo, I discovered that there was no way I would eventually get into making games, and it was not. I was doing an internship in communication and public relation, and that was not the approach I liked or enjoyed about games, because it was all about selling the idea or the games regardless of their value as a game. During that time, slowly started to become the idea that maybe I should try to make a game, and I became the idea guy. That might have happened to anyone else who has wanted to develop an app or create a website or just a company. At some point, you will start as the idea guy. So the idea guy, for those who don't know, is the person who thinks he got the greatest idea, who's going to make millions of dollars and sell so many games or everything, but has no other skills whatsoever into making that idea happen. And usually he gathers a team of people, some people who know how to program or how to design and stuff, and he's like, yeah, you're just all going to do my idea. That doesn't work. That doesn't work because everyone has ideas. And so why would anyone do your own idea rather than their own? That was a quick realization. I got told I was wrong, and as everyone at first, like, no, I'm sure I'm gonna make it. Eventually, I realized that wouldn't work. That that wouldn't work, but I did give up for a few years, but I didn't completely give up. So something I had heard one day is write down your ideas, because if you ever come back to it, it's a nice thing to have. So at the time I started writing down ideas about games I had, and I still have them somewhere. A few years later, eventually I came back to, so how do I stop being the idea guy? And I thought I enjoyed programming. I learned a little bit. I had an introduction class one day. So I started learning programming as a pastime. I was unemployed for a few months, and I took some class online. I also started learning, after I got into programming, the basics of hobby game development, making some things which had no intention of becoming a game, just like a Tetris or other programming challenges just for fun. But slowly the steps were getting there. I got bored of doing games by myself, so I started looking for communities with game development. And there are many I discovered in Switzerland, many hobbyist game developers, and you can find some in the German part of Switzerland, in Zurich, or in the Romandie. There is on the WhatsApp meetup, there is a lot of groups animated around making games, such as Game Developers Swiss Romand, or even here in Bern, Play Bern, even though there's someone from Play Bern here. Even though it's still a burgeoning community here in Bern. But that really helped me develop my skills, meet people, build a network, and eventually, one day, so to be honest, I started thinking, I know I have the skills, I can get into it, and I wanted to start making my own game and creating my own company all by myself. Thankfully, at the time, I found I was offered, through the network of game developer, I was actually offered a job as a game developer in a small company here in Geneva called Everdreamsoft to work on a game called Spells of Genesis. They took me with the portfolio of games I had made through with the community and the game jams. And that was really, really helpful, because I've discovered so many things on how a small company runs and how a game is actually made for real, not just as a hobby, that I am very thankful I had this. So I think I have a few things I wanted to say about this. I think there are no ideal formation. So I did not study programming at university. I studied business administration, which has nothing to do with being a developer. But I do believe a formation or like a studying is very important and ideal. Whatever you do, I think when you study, you learn a lot about working in groups, structuring your projects and your ideas, and it helps being down to earth. Like I've met people who did not necessarily study and sometimes lose a bit have a hard time organizing themselves or keeping down to earth. And my experience with Everdreamsoft makes me think that it is extremely important, if you want to start your own company, to first go get some experience into a similar company or into that industry, because there are a lot of things you just can't see from the inside that is like happening within and that you just can't see from the inside. This is an example of the games I made during the time with other people. I wasn't alone, but like with the community of developers here in Switzerland, we made small games as a hobby. So that was like a one-weekend game. So after 2 years of working at Everdreamsoft, I met a game designer there who was designing a game, and another game developer. And for some time, I was starting to think one of my idea, I was starting to seriously consider maybe now I'm going to actually make my own game and my company. I was wondering which idea, and one idea in particular was growing, which is the idea about Mars. And out of all the ideas I had written down, I picked this idea not randomly. So I think it's important to know why, it needs to be more than just an interesting concept you have in mind. And I had started to do a lot of research on the concept, and I was personally convinced that a game about Mars, or like the subject of Mars, was going to become bigger and bigger, and that it had potential. So that's why I picked this idea in particular. The project we were working on at Everdreamsoft eventually stopped development, and so I had started to mention the concept to two of my coworkers, and I proposed when they stopped the project, maybe we should get together for a week and test out the project, like work on it. So that's what we did. That was in early 2019. We got here in Effinger. I brought them. One is in the Netherlands, so I brought them for a week here. I worked with different people from Effinger. Manu is one of them, and we did a kickstart week of a project. So it was not just trying out the game; it was also like thinking out what's the vision for the game and the company as a bigger thing. Who are we going to sell the game to? And how are we going to approach things? And after a week, we were quite happy with the status of the prototype we had. I will show a quick picture of the prototype afterwards. And so we decided that was the start. So that was the beginning of starting our project. And at the time, we made a plan, and we were sure we would be finished by 2020. Like there was no way, like the earlier idea was that we would sell the game in Mars 2020 when the rocket was actually taking off to Mars. The current plan is released for September 2022, so we have a good 2 years and a half today. We halfway through, so once we decided to go, of course, became the question of creating the company. And starting looking for money. And I will talk about those 2 points a little more in details afterwards, about both creating a company and looking for money and getting our first grants. But I think one important point from that week as well was don't go in with money in mind, because the more I looked at the number, the more bleak it looked that we would actually make money. Like making money was not the goal. Like we wanted to create something, but money still needs to be the goal to some extent. So the point is more that is you shouldn't drive your motivation, or like your drive shouldn't be because you're going to make millions. You really need to believe in your idea and like the fun of doing it. But it's very important not to forget that you need to eat somehow, and the people you work with also need to eat. And there is no point in doing a project that doesn't have any financial viability. A quick picture to show this was the kickstart week when we worked here at Effinger with Manu and Reto, who is not here today, and my 2 associates, Sébastien and Seb, and Jasper, sorry. And this was the result of that prototype week, the very, very first prototype. So we didn't do a video game at the time. I mean, the goal was always to do a video game, but in a week it's a bit short. So we had done a paper prototype of the game. So a few things about founding the company. Founding the company was a long process of months. Not that the paperwork is so hard to do. I mean, there is a lot of paperwork, and I highly advise to let someone who actually knows how to do it, a lawyer or websites who can help you prepare all the things. The basic paperwork is the same for every company in any case, like they cover all the basics. But the hardest part was agreeing on splitting shares. And I don't think there is a good way to do it. As I came with the idea for the game and the idea for the company, and I was at the start of everything, at first I wanted to have almost all the shares because that was my baby. But the more we had discussions about this, the more it became clear that no one's going to work for me. Like no people at this time, when you're not paying them or anything, they're not just going to work for you. That was a bit still the idea guy. And for motivation purpose, they need also to have enough shares that they feel they own the project as well. And so realization has that my dream was not to own the project. My dream was to actually make and release a game, and that the company, especially itself, like ideally the company will make more than one game. So there was no reason why I should own more than them, the company. And the project is just a sub-product of the company. And so it's also detached from the overall splitting shares. And thus we went in the end for something more equal. The intention is that everyone needs to be happy and find his motivation into owning the company. Another discovery is something I hear a lot, but do write an associate agreement if you ever do something like this. And don't add the mature adult clause. The mature adult clause is not something that actually exists, but it's something that comes up a lot in discussions, because these discussions are hard, and a lot of hard subject ends up as, we're adult, no need, like, if there is ever a problem, we'll talk it through. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen because no one agrees on what being an adult, a mature adult is. We all have very different ideas about this. And so eventually will come a thing where we all think we're mature adults, but that still doesn't completely work out. So it is hard, but my personal learning is I highly advise to put in writing as much as possible and go through all the difficult questions. And difficult question is, like everything from working together, organizing our work time, many things like this. Another point I think is important, or it's a core value that we have, but I wanted to share because I think it's more general than just for us, is being very open about everything that is going on in the company. And I strongly think that no one is going to steal your idea. There is no point in trying to keep secrets or not talking about it. It's better to talk as much about it as possible, because maybe people will be like, oh, I am so interested about this. Maybe I can help, maybe I can pitch something, but yeah. And why I think no one's going to steal your idea, that comes back to the idea guy. People have their own ideas, they don't need yours. And if they think your idea is really the greatest idea, usually an idea is birthed through is a very long process. So I've had that idea about this game grow for multiple years before we went into the company. And anyone who's going to start from scratch is going to have to go through that process as well. And they're not going to, you have a huge lead in front of everyone with your own idea. And the other point is also at the end, so that might be different if you're making a very specific product and the schematics get stolen. But for any creative work, there is value, like the end product will be different depending on who makes it. And there is space, there is more value in having multiple games about terraforming Mars, because people, for example, in a very specific case, if I play a game that I like, I'm not gonna not touch any other similar product. I'm gonna look for more if I liked it. And I think there's even value if people want to copy my idea, because then it grows the market, and there is more chance that more people will be eventually going to come to my game. So yeah, for important points for us, I thought. That was the team when we founded the company here in Effinger. And so about finance, looking for money. Of course, money is very important. Pitching again and again and again. We've pitched the idea and the concept so many times to being sick of it. So the first learning from this is your company is worth nothing. Until you actually have clients and are making money and do not necessarily need money because you've made it in a way. Until then, your company is worth nothing. It's just an idea. Even if you worked hundreds or thousands of hours on it, if you don't have clients, if you don't have a cash flow, then the idea has no value. And that's important because we pitch to different things. So we pitch for public fundings, we pitch to business angel and personal investors, and then we pitched as well to publisher type of deal. So they don't invest in the company, but they support the development of the project, which is what we found in the end. I will talk more about this. But so this, the company is worth nothing is in particular true for business angels. There are different tools to value your idea and your company, and they all need to know how much money you're doing, because then they do forecasts. They multiply this by a number and they say, hey, your company now is worth $1 million. But if your company has 0 clients yet, the number is 0. It's 0, and they will offer stuff like, we give you 10,000 francs and we want 20% of the company, for example, which is completely unrealistic for us, at least. And that made us realize, like, there needs to be an amount of money that you consider serious. It's a lot of work, a lot of discussions, and a lot of stress often. And for us, we decided, like, if the money is too small, then why don't we even have the conversation? Like, why are we even sitting about 10,000 francs when to pay, that pays 2 people for a month if you're having a cheap salary? And that's not enough to grow a company. So if the amounts are less than 100,000, then it's just not even worth having the conversation to sell shares of the company. So we've pitched to investors. That didn't work out. We pitched to public funds for smaller amounts, but public funds is a little easier. They don't take shares of your company usually. So there is a fund, Swiss Games from Pro Helvetia. They finance this type of project because video games are categorized as art. So it's the Swiss Art Council. We pitched the first time. We had made a good video, a nice application, and they refused. And they didn't just refuse, they told us how bad everything was. And that was fine. That was hard to take, of course, but we learned a lot. We learned a lot, and pitching to and making those applications in the end help establish the base of the seriousness of your project, because they will ask you for a business plan. They will ask you for a budget and a forecast in the future. They will ask you for like sales estimation, marketing studies, and things like that. And it's all very annoying to do, but after doing it a few times and learning why one part was not good, unrealistic, or something like this, eventually you do start to end up with a pretty serious look at your own project. So it helps to keep foot down to earth. There is a way, so it's very hard, of course, at the end. I'm not necessarily going in order, sorry, but there is this saying, which is fake it until you make it, which I think is very true. But you still need to be realistic. So fake it until you make it is more on the side of you can't know how long your project is going to do. You can't know how long, like how much money exactly you're going to need, but you're going to be asked to provide those numbers. And you're going to be asked to say why you're the right team to do this. So in this case, it's okay to, I think, conflate a bit your project, or just like give big numbers and act that you're sure about it. But you need to be realistic. So if your plan is to be to develop a product for 2 years with 5 people, the budget needs to reflect accurately this, because they know the number. And they just want to see like the ballparks and be sure that you are realistic. Then comes down to early investors need to trust the team more than the product and how good the product is. That is my own interpretation, but seeing the product we managed to get funding for, which was really not looking anything very impressive, I think one very important part is they need to have the feeling that the team is not going to collapse, that you're going to go somewhere. Because as soon as they give you money, the biggest risk for them is that you never actually achieve. Like it's not even that you don't make a good product; it's that you never actually make the product, because so many teams are not well organized, or like things don't work out and they didn't discuss everything or stuff like this. So the team collapses, the product ends, and they lose their money. And so it's very important that you show why you're going to succeed on that aspect, like why you're going to be able to work through things, that you're well organized, that you're good on making the product as much as the product itself is good. And 50% of any pitch, I believe, is personal feelings. Like it's never fully subjective either, even for public fundings. And that comes back to don't give up on first refusal. So the first time we pitched to Pro Helvetia, they said no, but we pitched again, and in the end we got it. And for our publisher, so we eventually found someone to finance our project. which is Goblin Studio, and they are currently helping fund and develop our game. And so for them, the small story is the first time we pitched the project. That was part of the learning curve. They told us they were not interested and that we were not very realistic with our numbers, such as like salaries and marketings and things like this. That was an event, like a industry type of event. We came back later and they said to another event, we asked if we want to meet. They said, well, we had looked at your project and we don't want it. But if you want, you can show me your demo and I'll give you some feedbacks to be nice. So I was like, okay. I streamed the game a little bit, and the guy got really hooked, really hooked. Said, okay, send me the demo. I'm going to pitch it to the CEO of the company, and so a serious discussion started to start it. It went a bit further, and then they said no. But we came back a third time to it, and we had made progress. We had gotten the grants so there were more safety in our capability to go, and we were still there. I think that's part of the thing. Like after a year, they still see us. We're still working on the same project. The project is evolving, so they're like, oh, those guys are not collapsing. So it feels a bit safer. And then it worked out. And I think part of the reason it worked out is also you need to pitch at the right, for them, it also needs to be the right moment. And that moment was they liked the project, that was fine, but they were also in a situation where they were looking for more projects, especially they were looking for a project in space, and things kind of all fit together. But so don't give up, even if someone says no. I mean, don't be too insistent, but if there was a feeling, once every 6 months or whatever, send an update, say, hey, we've made progress if you want to have a look or something. This is the game at the time we pitched to Goblin Studio and on which they signed. So it was very, very early. The basic concepts were there, but we didn't really have a UI designer at the time, and it was all drawn by hand on Paint, as you can see. So they really needed to have a lot of trust to follow us on this project. Another important point I wanted to bring, I have no idea of the time. Oh, I have a whole lot of time. I think when you're funding a company like this, an important point is finding support groups. And support groups, plural, because there are many types of group. But for me, that was really joining Effinger. I was already working remote before I started the project. And quickly being alone at home became difficult. And so I joined Effinger, and that brought a lot of things such as a network and people who helped me actually when I started funding the company, but also inspiration from the community, seeing other people, how they work, the project they're doing, and like the things they do, as well as sometimes advice. So I could sit with someone who was doing logos, or someone who was doing a brand identity, or someone who was actually looking for funding and having chat with them on how do you look, who do you ask, and what's your experience with this. So I think it's very important to find, to not go at it alone. Of course, support from friends and close friends and family is important to have their approval. It's not always easy. My partner and my family were not completely convinced that giving up my job and working on this was really the best idea to do and to as a growth for myself for the future. But I was so motivated and it was such a big dream that they were like, okay, you can give it a try, like I support you in this. But that wasn't like, oh yes, I'm sure you're going to succeed. It was more, okay, take a few months to try this out. And of course, financial support. This comes down to the conclusion that there are no self-made men, in my opinion. And to work, I worked for free on that project for 1.5 years, and you need money to do this. So financial support can be from yourself, from surrounding, but you need to be able to eat somehow. And funding a company is expensive, and you need to have money somewhere. And this is where there are no self-made men, in my opinion, is because maybe there are a few exceptions that confirms the rules. But in my experience, everyone who managed to start something from scratch had a lot of support groups. They had backings, financial backing from their family, from an inheritance, from a second author who works for two. They had close friends and family supporting them. They had a community sharing ideas and helping you go through. So I think it's very important to embrace, accept, and remember help, and when you can, to give back. And that's also a core of our value. We share anyone who asks anything or application files or whatever. We always are more than happy to share and help others start. Some people who helped me is not here today, but making trailers, Fabu. This is another week where we decided to go with some people of Effinger to a house in the mountain and work on everyone's was working on his own project, and then we had a session where we would discuss our project in front of the others, and they would give feedback on the projects. So finally, reaching reality. After pitching again and again and again, finding a support group, making a product, surviving for a year, we found a publisher, Goblin Studio, and we signed with them. So the type of deals is usually they help finance the project, the product, and when the product will release, they get back their investments, and then we have a revenue split on the project. Now that we had money, we could grow and find more people. Finding more people is a challenging task, I've discovered. I thought first I went the usual way of putting an ad, hey, we're looking for an artist, for example, or for a programmer and things like this. That never fully worked for me, unfortunately. I don't know what's the best way, mostly because I don't know. Mostly the issue is then everyone applies, and I want to reply to everyone and read everyone's application, and it's a lot of work, and I feel very bad to tell them, actually, this is not what we're looking for. So for me, what has worked for us, but has been to reverse the process and search myself. So if I need a graphic artist, I went onto ArtStation, which is a website where artists put their paintings, and contacted the ones I liked directly. For musicians, kind of the same. We are working with a writer. We did the same. So in the end, finding people has been more a process of looking for people specifically rather than just putting an ad and waiting for people to apply and hoping something good will come in. We try to be equal, open, and flexible in every aspect. That was maybe more something about finding the company, but and this is something I've mentioned. We try to constantly improve our workflow to not set that we have a single way of doing things. I wonder if I have another slide, but anyway, I think I do. I'll go back. And yeah, working and creating a company is sometimes very stressful. It is very stressful, but not so much due to the work time. We often hear that founders, they work 150 hours. That might not be possible, but many hours a week, more than normal. And that is crazy and all. So for me, in my experience, that's not been the case. I haven't worked. I work a little more sometimes, maybe sometime on the weekend, sometimes late, but not something out of the ordinary, and not necessarily outside of what you would encounter in another startup or company. The hard thing has been the mental load. So because it's such a big project and you're so involved as an owner of that project, you can't stop thinking about it, and that takes your energy and your space to do things outside of work, and it can feel like work sometimes if you keep thinking about it the whole weekend. Even if you didn't do anything, you didn't feel like you had your weekend. So the mental load is hard, and it's important to do stuff to lighten it, find time for yourself, to do other activities that's completely detached from the work. And an important thing that I've learned here in Effinger is celebrate the small wins. To help go through things, any small achievement is worth celebrating. Don't wait for the big thing. Be happy of where you are at the moment. Celebrating small wins here in Effinger. working together, so especially with COVID-19. So we've started as a company where everyone is away. I'm the only one here in Effinger. A few of us are in Lausanne. There is one in the Netherlands, another one in Germany, another one in Denmark, another one in Portugal. So we're really spread around Europe. But we've had to improve because at first we thought, oh, that just works by itself. But slowly things piles up, and I think there is really a lot of value in meeting in person. So to work together and to improve through time those difficulties, we've established, for example, coffee breaks. So coffee breaks are so important, and when you're not physically together, it's hard to do. So now we do a virtual coffee break every day to just discuss things which are not related to the game or to the project. Like, hey, I saw this movie the other day and things like that. We try to talk tensions out. I think that's very important. Pick your fights. Yes, this is a point I wanted to talk. A source of tensions. It's easy on the daily work, and especially in a small company where everyone participates in every discussion. So we don't have a hierarchy structure. We do have like people in different roles, but everything is discussable. And so sometimes it's easy to get into a long discussion where you really want it one way and someone else really wants it another way, and then you justify your points and so on. This can be very draining in terms of energy and create tension in the team. And so this is where I think it's very important to pick your fights and always think like, is this point actually so important? Like, even if I would prefer it the other way, do I really care? And it's very important to sometimes let go, even if you strongly wanted it the other way. If the result is not so big for the final product, why care? And let people have their things. Another important point for the team are industry events. This is something maybe specific to game development that we hear a lot, but I think it can port to other industries. So industry events are like, for game development, it's Gamescom, which is a huge event in Germany where companies go show their game, they talk together, and public can come, like 500,000 people come every year. They cost a lot on the company, and the actual value is very small. People are not just going to buy your game there, who come and visit. So if you send your team, like 3 or 4 person for a full week to another country, and you have to have a hotel and transport and food, and it's actually, they're not working on the game or on your project when you're there. So it's money that you're spending for that event specifically. And then there is before the event, preparing everything, after the event, contacting everything back. So it's easily 2 to 3 weeks of not working on your project that you're paying to do this. They're very, very expensive, and I hear a lot, maybe it's not worth doing them. I personally think it's worth, but you need to know what you're buying, and you're not buying actual value, you're buying motivation, because those events are super motivating for the team. So it's a time for the team to find itself together and also meet other people who work on similar projects, see what they do, realize you're not alone in the world, everyone's going through the same struggling phase. Network and meet other potential contact to work with you, like we found all musicians like this. And it's just a moral boost in general to continue and go forward. And we really realized this with COVID. With COVID for 2 years, everything's been cancelled, and we felt the weight, like we are missing this. Sometimes we've been working and completely losing track of why are we even doing this. And I think in parts the reason is the lack of those events where you share and you meet and see what others are doing. So they're important, I think. Daily work. We have a small office in Lausanne now, so we're working. I go once a day in Lausanne to work with the people there. And that's actually getting to the end. Soon will be your questions. So what's next for us? We are currently finishing the game. The release will be next year. There will be a big release probably in March next year, and the final release will be in September. The goal eventually is to reach sustainability to make more games for the company. This is unsure, but this is where we are hoping to go. My personal goal one day would be to morph our company into a cooperative structure. I haven't talked much about this, but we try to have, we all pay the same in the company. There is no difference, and I can talk about why I think this is, I can say it now. We all pay the same in the company. The reason is, I think, that I don't see why there are a need for different, and this is a personal feeling, but that's my own feeling, that in the end, if any single person in the company doesn't do his work, then the company wouldn't manage to make a product that has this value. And so whether someone is just doing painting or just the accounting or whatever, in the end, it's everything has the same value to the overall achievement of the company, in my opinion. And so we try to have this as fair as possible and as flat as possible structure in the company. But of course, the owners of the company, we have the shares, which the others don't have. It's very expensive to morph into a structure where everyone can have share. But that's a personal goal I would love to do, to be able to give equal amounts of shares to everyone in relation to the work they've done. And if one day someone has more share than me, that means he's done more work than me in the company, then he fully deserved owning the company in a way. Like if he managed to work more than me, then why not? Like, and of course I have more dreams for after making games. I want to study again one day. I want to study physics, become an astronaut or something like this. This is a story for another time. Maybe go to Mars. Thank you. I hope that was interesting. And if you have questions about anything, feel free to ask. 3 questions on the first rank, we said. 2.
Yes.
Yes, Oleg.
What's the biggest reward in making a game?
That's an easy one. But of course, so the biggest reward is seeing people play your game and enjoying it. Like if they're not having fun, it's not a big reward. But seeing people interact with your game and spending time on it, even if you don't know if they're enjoying, like if they get hooked into continuing and progressing, it's very rewarding and motivating. And the discussion then that come from it when they give feedback and ideas, and you can brainstorm with them a little bit. Really enjoyable. That outweighs the hardship of running the company and going somewhere. Definitely.
If anybody wants to play Terraformers, I have it on my laptop.
Indeed, there is a free version, a free demo online for anyone who
And
wants.
the supporters pack, only 8 francs. I just bought it.
But is the game now officially launched, or
No.
is it a beta? Or?
No, so that's more on the marketing strategy side of things. But so we have a prologue, it's called, which is a kind of an upgraded demo of the game, which is completely free, and you can play right now. But it's not the full game. The idea being that having that product, so it's a bit. I don't know. For those not familiar with the game industry, the games on PC or console or things like this work really like app on the phone. So you have a game app store. There are multiple of them, but and each game has its own page, and people can wish list the game. So they add it to, I want to hear about it when this game releases. And a lot of the performance of a game being developed is measured based on those wish lists. And you can make forecasts of how it will work out based on that. And so to help with this, we have created a second page, which is the prologue. And that helps, which is free, and it's the demo of the game. People can go play, and then that helps to create natural, organic traffic to our page, which helps with the algorithm and getting wish lists.
So how many people are in the wish list?
We are nearing, I think we're at 55,000 right now. So a little above this.
That's
And,
many, yes.
Yeah, that's many, but we need more.
I will
Make
go.
go and wish the game. No, yes, no, that's definitely many, and that's over the minimum we are aiming for, but that's not yet the number where we feel would be comfortable, like to have a sustainable company, for example. So we would need about between 70 and 80,000 wish lists to be there, and that's what we're aiming for.
Okay, nice.
I'd like to hear what's your connection to Mars? So why the Mars?
Yes, what's my connection to Mars? And to Effinger to some extent. So this is a little besides the point of entrepreneurship, but I'm happy to talk about it. I strongly believe that that's a personal feeling, but that humanity eventually will need to go to space to some extent. And I don't know if Mars is the right place to go or if we'll go there at all, but I think it's the right place to start. We need to go, it's the first island in a way to go somewhere. And I even applied to go to Mars to a company at the time who were hiring astronauts. I did not get selected, but I thought, well, if I can't get to Mars myself, I want to help somehow. And one of the way to help, I think, is through media, which helps bring the idea in the mind of the people that that's something we might do and get them interested. And maybe like the biggest thing would be if a kid or someone plays our game, and the game becomes one of the reasons why he wants to become an astronaut, and he starts studying and he becomes an astronaut and eventually goes to Mars. And maybe one day on Mars he'll say, oh yeah, I played Terraformers when I was young, and even though it's completely wrong, that helped me go to Mars.
So as a mother, you should be a little cautious if you want to give this to your kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
My kid goes to Mars.
Yeah. And actually, I forgot to put that picture, but so astronaut Claude Nicollier, who is a Swiss astronaut, the only Swiss astronaut, supports the game. He played it, and he thinks he has the same mindset that media help grow interest and attention to going to space, and so that he thinks this is the right way to approach it for the people who are not already into science and space. Cool, thanks.